Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Purple Journal podcast. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of purplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com. I write some articles there, along with Mr. Joe Oberle, who is a writer for Purple PTSD, Vikings Territory, and the Sports Post, and was also begrudgingly showing me the ropes the other day at training camp.
I tried to hide.
What a day. And the other rookie for training camp starting next week on Sunday, I believe, is Mr. Luke Braun, who writes for Purple PTSD, Vikings Territory. He's also on the Pocket Protectors podcast over on the Climbing the Pocket network. Are you, super psyched to check out the new facility or what, man?
I'm so psyched. I haven't been to a training camp since John David Booty was a Viking.
Oh, wow.
Even as a fan or anything, because I haven't lived in Minnesota since 2010. So I'm super excited to be there, and it's also just going to be a really cool opportunity, totally new experience for me. I could not be more hyped.
I think I was giving off this aura of just being in complete awe. I was walking, and I was trying to do a live stream of me walking from where you check in from the media parking lot to the facility, and there was these gals walking around with these signs on their backs that went way up in the sky with question marks on them for people to answer, but there wasn't that many people there. So I asked them how to get on the Wi-Fi password, and then I was walking towards the entrance of the media center, and this lady from 100 yards away yells, "Sir!" As I'm trying to live stream, and I turn around, and she ran up full speed, and she was like, "I need to see your credentials," because my tag flipped around. But you could see that I had it around my neck. I think it was just the fact that my jaw was completely dropped. And I was
super fanboy.
Seriously, I was semi-aroused. It was really not a good look for the website. But
it's a first day of the camp in a new place. That everybody, there's new employees, and they don't have the old pros from Mankato, so they're a little on edge. They want to do their job right, and and when I saw you walk in, I had to do a double take too. I almost asked you for your credentials, but
that was the first thing you said. What do you think? And I said, I can't believe this, man. I'm in complete awe of this situation. It's so, to think that in an organization that is about $10 billion a year in gross profits, just gross money, I guess, not profits, that the best facility in the entire league out of 32 teams is in Eagan, Minnesota. It just is mind-boggling, but it's you really appreciate not just how classy it is, but walking into the media center, they have a couple murals that show the team throughout the decades, and they have pictures of Randy Moss and Denny Green, and it's just it's done so perfectly in a way that it's new, but they're really trying to make it feel like it's part of the history and delving into that too. So I don't know. I know, Joe, that obviously you have a lot more experience than we do in regards to I've never seen a media center, what that media center looks like compared to what was going on in Mankato. But before we kind of get into the news, I just wanted to get your perspective on TCO. And I know that you had a kind of a story that we were talking about as we were walking out.
Yeah, it's if you're talking about the media center itself, it's the best one they've ever had. Down in Mankato, it was a few converted classrooms. You were actually, some of you, if there was too many people, you were sitting at high school or high school like desks, and college desks, I guess. But the park was just there was hardly any room. There was probably room for about 10 people to sit and work, and you just had to hang out outside. So this is much bigger. You got. It's nicer. It's just as nice as everything else. It could be a little bit bigger, especially for for training camp, because they had to have an overflow section where people went out, had to go through the main room and then onto another one. But it's decked out as good as you can possibly be. I don't know that the media is their top priority, but it's decent, and it will, it's a step up from what we're used to. As far as the story goes, it was really kind of interesting to me because, I'm from Mankato, and I have anybody that's listened to this podcast or read on the site knows I'm pretty partial to the camp being down there and had much fun with that. And I'm a little, saddened that it has changed, but I, totally understand how that works. Coming up here, I was, figuring I'd be the only one, thinking that way. And Ben Gessling from the Star Tribune kind of sought me out and wanted to say, you know what, I miss Mankato. He said, this is not the same. It's not the same deal as it was down there. I think, we talked about how, in a small, quaint little town where, it wasn't so, for lack of a better word, I don't know if you said corporate, but if it was, it's really polished where they are now. And the players are, at their homes and they've got other things going on. And when they're in Mankato, they're more kind of captive. And Ben talked about how you'd get the opportunity to get to know these guys, and you might even run into them outside of the pressure of, the training camp itself where everybody's going after them. And you can really, get better stories that way. And he says, now it seems like the players are almost a little bit at arm's length.
Yes.
And he was a little bit frustrated by that, which I said, that's a very good point. I didn't see it that way. I have my own reasons for wishing it was still in Mankato, but that's a very a salient point. I thought, that it's NFL. It's the controlling of the NFL. They can put the players where they want them and keep media just where you're supposed to be. And I don't know if it's contrived to that degree, but it sure comes off that way a little bit, and it's going to be an adjustment for all the people in the media. I thought what Ben had to say was really interesting.
Yeah, I do remember actually. I was part of the last blog group at Mankato last year, so I was there on the last night, and we weren't allowed in the media room, so we actually had to sit in the hallway in some random chairs. So I do remember that. I do. It's kind of like the juxtaposition between U.S. Bank Stadium and the Metrodome. I had surgery the first season, and I was 4 months no weight bearing, so I didn't actually get to go to U.S. Bank Stadium until last season, and that was during the preseason game against, I think, the 49ers, and we were in a box, so I wasn't out amongst the people. But I do remember the Metrodome. It's not a lot like Philadelphia, but I remember always thinking, I want to bring my kids to this game until they're probably 13, just because of all of the masculinity in the crowd and the boos and the swear words and everything. It was kind of hostile, but I liked it in a weird way, and I think that's kind of what he was talking about too. Now it's not just the sound being different. The Metrodome was so damn loud, but it's you understand why they're doing it, because you don't want to have a league where people are afraid to bring their kids. But that was kind of what made it quaint, I guess. If that makes any sense.
It really had vibe to it, and it has a different vibe up there. It's going to be nice. I think the stadium that they're going to play on is really nice. The facilities, as far as what they can do for the team, all those things we've seen in print are fantastic. They're great. It's just slightly it's different, and it's really going to be interesting to see how the media readjust and if that changes the relationships we have with the players or whatnot. It remains to be seen, but it was neat to hear that from somebody other than me, that he just says, I miss Mankato, and I really appreciated that.
We fear change.
Yeah, and obviously the big news story of the week was kind of the gut punch that happened with Tony Sparano. And there's so many, my reaction to it, and I really want to hear what you guys thought, just what your initial reaction to it was, but it felt like, I guess I'm the hyper negative person on the show, or at least the most violently emotional. And I remember thinking, this feels like Corey Stringer all over again. The year after we got blown out by an NFC East team in the NFC Championship, we have somebody die during camp or right before camp. It just felt like, here we go again, sort of. And I don't want to really put it in those terms, because I feel like, this is a human being that died. And I don't want to make it all about, well, shit, the offensive line, now it's even worse, and just kind of make it about that, because it's bigger than that, and sometimes people kind of lose that perspective. But, it's obviously horrible on many levels, with just how important the line is going to be for the success or failure of this team to lose a leader like that. I mean, to hear Zimmer, crack up during his press conference was like, watching my dad cry or something. It was just like, oh, man, this is awful. And so, Luke, I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, and obviously Joe, too, since I've actually had the opportunity to kind of speak with Sparano in the past.
Yeah, I don't think it's the conversation to have right now to talk about, like, how does this affect the performance of the O-line in this?
Yeah.
Like, that's probably not where we should be talking about it. I think in terms of Sparano's legacy, obviously he's going to be most often remembered as a football coach. And in that legacy, he sought innovation in a context where I don't think a lot of coaches would have had the stones. Like when he took over the Dolphins in 2008, they were coming off of a 1-15 season, and he was a rookie head coach, and he had the stones to reach back into the playbooks of, the 1940s, like, single wing, and basically modernize that, and that's the Wildcat, and took that to the only division title that hasn't been won by the Patriots since, Brady and Belichick took over there. So that, and I think that innovation, he continued to do that throughout the rest of his career, his time at Miami all the way through Oakland, and even bringing the Wildcat here. And not only that, but also changing us from a pretty disastrous man scheme to his own scheme, and kind of changing our philosophy here and the attitude in the room. And then, like you said, just hearing the coaches, all the coaches talk about him, even DeFilippo, who was only here for, only really worked with him for a few months. But, hearing Spielman and Zimmer talk about him as this guy that was just infectious, and this guy that was not only a leader, but kind of inspired players to be like him. And that's a really special person, and he should be remembered for that. It's really tragic that he passed so young. 56 is not a normal age for people to be passing away.
Yeah, these days.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But
tough.
I think I hope that people can draw a sense of togetherness from it, and win it for Tony.
Yeah, man.
It was tough to see, watch these tough guys like, tough guy like Zimmer break down like that. And how special, how, like what close friends they were. I guess I didn't realize they went out together all the way back to Dallas. And I guess I did. DeFilippo
Parcells guys.
That got a plane coming.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I did hear DeFilippo say today that he was with him in Oakland the year that Sparano took over as head coach and kind of dug them out of the morass they were in. So apparently their families are pretty close. So maybe there is something more there where they were pretty close too. But it's such a tough deal. The Vikings have gone through it with Corey Stringer. I was in my last months at the Timberwolves when Malik Sealy died, and saw how that just tore our organization apart. I was had a foot out the door, but I was still there, and it was really a sad day, and it was sad for a long time there. Where, it's such a gut punch, and it's really going to be interesting to see how they do react. But I guess I was floored more than anything by how much love there was for him around the league. I mean, there was note after note on Twitter and wherever else, just talking, people saying how much they love this guy and how much he meant to him. He had the big gruff exterior and was pretty crabby on the outside, but inside apparently had a heart of gold. And the Vikings are really going to miss something here. I mean, someone that was that well loved by his players, that's difficult to recover from on so many levels.
Yeah, and what do you guys think? There's a few names being floated around out there. Some guys that have been with the team for a while, some guys that haven't been. I know that this isn't really a realistic opportunity, but I thought it was interesting that, initially people were talking about bringing Mike Tice back, and it was, I don't know. I felt like just talking about that because I feel like as somebody who really came of age during that era, of the Mike Tice, Red McCombs era, and obviously like the disdain that I have for Red McCombs, I feel like I just wanted to put out there that Tice was considered one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. That's why he got the head coaching job. And a lot of people on our network were just like, Tice, no, that's awful. And I just feel like he's good at what he does, and he was trying to run a team with an owner who didn't want to spend a dime. So I just think he got a bad rap. I wanted to put that out there. But beyond that, I know, Luke, you were off air. We're talking about a couple of the names that are being floated around. When me and Joe were at the first day of camp,
Clancy Braun.
There you go. And he was kind of running the show with the iron fist. It was kind of like, we're not going to focus on this. We're just going to move on. And like, he was being really kind of, hardline on the rookies, which I thought was a good thing. But if you wanted to kind of talk about where you think the team is at with that, when you think they're going to make a decision.
I would imagine they make a decision pretty soon, because the longer you go without really having, like, especially with with the offensive line and a lot of new faces and the kind of chemistry element that there is in offensive line, you kind of want to insert as much stability as possible. So Clancy Barone was the guy who I guess was running the show today, and Andrew Janoko was also running the show a little bit. He's an offensive line assistant. Very probable that they will hire from within. However, there's another guy whose name I already forgot. We talked about it literally 20 minutes ago.
Janoko? You're not Janoko.
No, a former Cardinals OC. I forget his name.
I wrote it down somewhere.
That guy.
Yes. Yeah, he's. I'll pull up his name in a sec. But he's also, I guess, has been discussed, but it's probably probably not going to be an outside hire, at least not this season. Next year, then you'll look and see how whoever the interim guy played or performed, and then move forward from there. But for now, it's probably going to be somebody who's within the organization, who was within the organization last year, and therefore is familiar with the coaching style and all the players. And Sparano also did a lot of run game coordination and designed a lot of the run game. So you're going to need a guy who's like familiar with that and is going to be able to say, when DeFilippo or Zimmer says, okay, we need a 5-yard run play here, somebody who's able to pick that up right away. They've got a game in 2 weeks.
And how much do you think that the fact that DeFilippo kept him as the offensive line coach, like, is that something, when you bring in a new offensive coordinator, obviously, like you just said, that he has some pull on the run game, that must have been like a testament to they believed in what he was doing. So I just think that...
I don't think they changed anybody.
Yeah, which I don't know, like percentage-wise how often that happens, but you'd have to think that it meant that they believed in what he was doing. So it makes sense to hire somebody like, I
think it's...
I was just going to say Janoko was the guy I thought, just because he was the assistant last year. And, he'd probably be the easiest to plug in and keep things at the status quo. But,
Seeing how Zimmer hovered over the line the 2 days at practice, I mean, he was just been, the 2 practices I saw, he was watching everything that they were doing, how the line was responding to the coaches, what the coaches were, what they were doing. And, of course, how many times I've been at camp and I never see hardly anybody paying attention to the offensive line. And my goodness, every camera stance was there, pointed at him and watching him. So that's why I agree with Luke.
Yeah, Harold Goodwin is the guy.
Harold Goodwin.
Yeah. Harold Goodwin is the outside guy's name. But yeah, it's probably going to be one of those 2 guys. Although Clancy Barone was working with the tight ends, a lot of the time the tight ends and the O-line practice together on blocking drills, so they both have a decent amount of familiarity. You could really be either of those guys.
There's someone today that came out and said that was that Brian O'Neill that said the transition was seamless, although his experience wasn't that deep to say that, but that's what he said anyway. So
seems like a very similar energy.
Yes, absolutely.
Speaking of the offensive line, was it today that the team came out and said that Elflein had shoulder surgery? Obviously, that was kind of one of the bigger stories on day one, was that Elflein was on the PUP. But I mean, that's kind of, I don't know what his timetable to return is. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about that.
Well, Zimmer did say that he didn't think it would be very long. They're waiting for they're just waiting for the doctors to give them the go ahead. And they're being real careful with. And this is something that Ben Gessling reported as well, which was that in addition to the ankle injury at the end of the season, he had shoulder surgery in the off season, and there's there's two kind of surgeries that are both can affect an offensive lineman, especially with your shoulder when you're pushing against those strong defenders, and they're probably gonna go easy with him and make sure that he's ready to go, because it is huge that they get him for the whole season this year. So Zimmer did say he doesn't like talking about injuries, and so he just kind of got in and out of the question, but he basically said he goes, it shouldn't be very long, whatever that means.
Yeah, and I think they brought in a guy named J.P. Quinn. Joe, you mentioned him when I got there as the center. He was struggling to get the shotgun balls back to Cousins.
Missed a couple.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
a couple completely that they had to go chasing, so it wasn't pretty. And even Cousins had said something about him today, they asked him about his own adjustment once he got here, and he says, "What? You're going to have that?" He goes, I saw J.P. Quinn struggling a little bit, trying to take everything in at once. He goes, and I asked him, how's it feel to drink out of a fire hose? So that was.
Yeah, I got home with the press release stuff. I grabbed basically everything that was in the media center. One of them was a press release about the roster moves. They waived Josiah Price and added Quinn. And my dad's like, "Oh, they got someone from Big Ten Junior. That's awesome." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think he's gonna make the team."
No, he's not. J.P. Quinn only has 16 games of starting experience under his belt. He played his senior year, and that's just about it. Though he played left guard, right guard, and center there, so I think that versatility was probably, gives him a better chance than if he were just a center. But I don't know, this is me just kind of speculating, but I think the fact that they got a guy that's, really just there to complete the drills, and
body.
fill out.
Camp body.
Yeah, camp body, and maybe he can make the practice squad if he's really that talented, because he did have a good senior year at Central Michigan, but the fact that they brought in a guy like that and not, a guy that is expected to compete for a start tells me that they are, tells me about the level of concern they have about Elflein,
Yeah,
right.
That's a really good point, actually.
And they got Easton to back him up at center if he's not ready to go. So, but then they need
a lot of interior linemen who can compete for those guard positions.
And I think this is a good time, too, because it's just a natural segue, but I think Barrero was talking about, Joe, you mentioned this in our agenda emails, about there's not a lot of drama at camp, not a lot of position battles. The team is pretty much set at a lot of different places, so you're looking at a lot of bubble guys, which is a huge plug for the pieces that Luke has been doing since he's been focusing the last month and a half on exactly that. And you summed up your 90 series recently, and basically you had your roster prediction, and so I kind of wanted your thoughts on that. If you wanted to explain a little bit more, we've talked about this in the last couple shows, but kind of where you were at on that, what the goal was and how you think that the team is shaping up in that regard.
Yeah, it's definitely by far my favorite thing to do every year, and this is my fourth year doing it. So I go through every player on the 90 and just do a kind of a bio, but it's not the bio that you're used to seeing for these players. It's he got 13 tackles and blah 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 and 12 starts. It's more about who they are and their story and where they came from and how they got to where they are, and a lot of these guys fell out of the draft. Why did they fall out of the draft? Stuff like that. So basically doing a little profile on each guy on the 90, and it's a lot of fun to go look through all these guys, but you also get a decent sense of where people are at in their careers when they're coming into these position battles. So, Barrero's right. In terms of starters, there's a lot that's pretty much decided. I think maybe slot corner and and the guard positions, and that's about it. Or right tackle, I guess, but that's probably still Rashad Hill anyways, and that's about it. But in terms of the backups, there's always a lot of competition. There is the running back 3 competition. This would be a fun one to look at
Big time.
in the fourth quarter of preseason games. between Mike Boone, Rock Thomas, and Mac Brown. They're all very similarly built guys, very similar to Jerick McKinnon. They're kind of shifty, quick receiving backs. Mike Boone actually was a wide receiver who transitioned to running back at Cincinnati. And watching him even in drills, you can kind of see that natural ball adjustment ability when it comes to catching passes out of the backfield that he learned as a wide receiver. And I think it's helping him more than the rawness is hurting him, which is why in my roster prediction that came out, that is kind of how I wrap up that series. I actually have Mike Boone winning that job. There's also an interesting battle at the bottom of the wide receiver depth chart. You kind of have Diggs and Thielen, and then Kendall Wright will be the next slot receiver, Laquan Treadwell will be the next outside receiver, and then after that it's kind of a big scrum for one spot, maybe two. And I think the most likely guys are Stacey Coley, Tavares King, and Caleb Jones, though you have Brandon Zylstra as kind of a dark horse that people like, and a couple of other, Jake Weineke, another hometown kid people are rooting for. But I think that'll be interesting, especially because they kind of have one or two spots, and they kind of will have to choose, do we keep an extra slot receiver or an extra outside receiver? And the decision they make there will probably tell you a little bit about what DeFilippo plans to do scheme-wise in terms of, how deep he wants both of those positions to be.
And who did you choose, kind sir?
I chose Coley.
Ooh,
I
he got
think
hurt today,
based on
too.
He's been hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, he got hurt.
I think
he got hurt in OTAs or something, and got hurt against
still waiting to come back.
It said I searched the news before the show, and the top one was 4 hours ago. It says Stacey Coley strains growing at practice today.
Oh God.
Oh, that's weird.
Star Tribune, yeah. So that's not good.
Those strained groin sounds pretty minor though, and
Yeah.
I think he's going to make it on the basis of special teams.
Okay.
Because you need. In my roster prediction, I also have Cheryl's getting cut, so you need more people who can do a punt return in that one. Which I don't think I'm struggling to remember, but I think the last 3 years I predicted Cheryl's to make it. So this is not I know every year there's somebody going this is the year for Marcus Cheryl's. This is a change of heart for me, and I'm kind of sad about it.
Yeah,
I think that he's going to lose the punt return job to Mike Hughes, and then after that point, he's pretty hard to justify rostering.
What do you think of Brandon Zylstra?
I think he had a good OTA, and when people are doing their roster predictions, there's a lot of recency bias. There's a lot of people who are living off of OTAs and who are living off of their good preseason last year. But when you get one drive into the first preseason game, all of that ceases to be relevant. The second Brandon Zylstra drops one pass in a preseason game, all of his good OTAs and everything else is going to be totally irrelevant. I'm rooting for the kid. He's another hometown guy.
Does he do any
really cool
punt coverage stuff? I was asking Joe about that because he's a bigger guy, and I was wondering if he was like Patterson, on punts, just busting ahead of everybody. And
well, he's 25 years old. He's good size. He could probably, if he could make it as a special teamer, he's got a shot. But the way Luke laid out the wide receivers, it's funny that we're talking about these guys down there when in fact, half of these guys we're talking about at the bottom might have made the team in years past. And now here, they have a good problem at wide receiver. There's a lot of good players to pick. Some of them I could still see them pushing Laquan Treadwell for a spot. They're going to give him a really good shot, but if it doesn't happen for him this year, maybe there's one of these guys down lower who could really, say, hey, sorry.
I was going to say that exact same thing. I think that speaking of recency bias, he's been hyped up a lot this preseason. That's because it seems like they're just feeding him the ball constantly because they're trying to make that decision. So that'll be interesting.
I've got Zylstra on the practice squad. I don't think anybody's going to push Laquan Treadwell for that wide receiver 3 spot. I think that as disappointed as we are in him in the first round pick, when you start comparing him to guys like Caleb Jones, who's been cut by multiple teams, and Tavares King, who's been cut by multiple teams.
I was going to ask you about King.
Up against that competition, the standards change a little bit, and I think Laquan Treadwell's it'd be really hard for any of those guys to push Laquan Treadwell for snaps.
Yeah, it seems like King is like a poor man's Diggs. So it's almost scary how much their combines height, and one ran like a 4.64, one ran a 4.65. They're like almost
I believe
identical.
he plays both slot and outside too.
The Vikings can handcuff him, just like in fantasy football. Can they do that?
Bring him in when Diggs misses his 2 or 3 games per usual.
Exactly. Yeah, Tavares King. So he spent his first 3 years in the league bouncing around and not really sticking anywhere until the end of 2016, where he finally managed to stay in the reserve for the Giants. And I think he got a little lucky because he caught a touchdown in the playoff game they played in 2016. But he didn't take like a bunch of snaps in that game. He just happened to catch a touchdown on one of the few that he did take. And that kind of propelled him to make the team in 2017, and then everybody got hurt on the Giants. So he got a lot more exposure there. But I think that's a couple of strokes of luck for him, and I think it's more indicative that, I think 4 out of the 5 teams he's tried out for have cut him, or he's been bouncing on and off a practice squad. So I don't know with Tavares King. I actually initially had him on the roster and then decided to keep 10 offensive linemen instead, so I recently went back and changed it. And I'm keeping 5 wide receivers because I just don't think any of the guys on the wide receiver group right now warrant cutting an extra offensive lineman where we know we need depth so bad there. I don't think any Zylstra or Caleb Jones or Tavares King, I don't think any of those guys warrant require that you cut some other position to roster those guys.
That's a good point.
But one other position battle way down deep that I kind of already talked about a little bit is Holton Hill versus Marcus Sherrills. Unless they keep seven cornerbacks, which they've done in the past, that could totally happen. But if they only keep 6 cornerbacks, you've pretty much got Holton Hill and Marcus Sherrills and Terrence Newman, and you get to keep 2 of those. So Terrence Newman I only mentioned because there's always a chance he could fall off the age cliff. But if he doesn't, he's obviously going to get rostered. And then you have Holton Hill, this young upstart kid, all the talent in the world, getting a lot of hype from OTAs in the first couple days of camp here. And the cockroach Marcus Sherrills. I think in a vacuum, if it weren't for Holton Hill's off-field stuff, he'd be a clearly better cornerback than Marcus Sherrills.
He's a big dude.
It's going to have to come down to some of the other Holton Hill.
Isn't he 6'2"? So. I thought he was 6'2".
Yeah, big outside corner.
I'm looking at the.
I'll look it up.
I'm looking at the defensive backs. Holton Hill, 6'2", 196 pounds.
Oh my God, he's lanky.
Yeah, man. That's what sold me on him right away.
25 pounds on him.
He's a bigger dude, and obviously we have 2
like those guys.
And that's really, I love Sherrills. I went to the U of M also, and he's always in perfect position, but he's just too short.
The thing they've always liked about him is that he doesn't fumble. He catches the ball.
Yeah,
and that's what won the job last year, because both Rodney Adams and Stacey Coley struggled mightily with that, and we know Adam Thielen's had trouble fumbling in games and in preseason.
Yeah, it's just his coverage, man. He's always right there. He's just like a half-inch too short or an inch too short.
But they're going to keep Mike Hughes, and he can replace that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was hoping to see some of that. Day one was obviously the rookies, and I was hoping to see they had a lot of guys, Zylstra included, returning kicks.
But not Hughes.
Yeah, but not Hughes. And so
I thought I saw him. I think he was in the highlight film catching a punt or a kick. The one the Vikings released.
It could have been maybe the morning. I got there for the afternoon practice, so maybe I missed that.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was a return fully thing. I think it might have just been like a catching drill. But they're clearly going to do that. He was electric at UCF.
Yeah, he looks good.
The only other battle I wanted to mention was the last defensive end spot. They'll keep either 2 or 3. Kind of depends on what they do with Jalen Holmes, if he plays inside or outside, and what they do with Brian Robeson. But you've got 1 or 2 spots to assign between Stephen Weatherly, Sean Bauer, the new draft pick Adi Aruna, and Afadio Denebo, who was a draft pick last year. And of those 3 guys all battled it out last year, and Weatherly and Bauer made the roster while Odenabo got cut and moved to the practice squad. But as I was also shaping up the practice squad for this prediction, I was kind of realizing you kind of can't. I think one of those 4 guys gets cut from the team entirely and not retained, and that'll be, I think, a shock for some people. And maybe you can roster 2 of them, maybe you can practice squad 2 of them. But but I don't think you can keep the rights to all 4 of them. I think one of them is going to end up elsewhere.
Doesn't Robinson and Terrence Newman even though they probably shouldn't, well, maybe you could make a case they could both make it, but shouldn't they both going to make the team just because he's going to want some leadership, some veteran leadership in there in those?
Yeah, Robeson, the variable with Robeson is whether or not he's pushing an inside guy or an outside guy off the roster. Or, if he just is suddenly way too old, which that can creep up on you. If a player like that's suddenly way too old and you'd be better off cutting someone else, or you'd be better off rostering someone else, like that'll happen. Pull a Colin Loeffler.
Yeah. Yeah, it surprises me. I was surprised last year that he had as good a
years he did.
And he really did, because
I
thought he was already thinking and talking about retiring. He was conceding his starting spot to Danielle Hunter, and I thought, oh my God, here comes a slide. And if he makes the team, I'd be surprised. And here he has a decent year, and just like Newman, they needed him, and he did fine, So
and a lot of that you have to think has to do with just like all the attention that like Linval brings, or Sheldon Richardson now. Like, he just seemed to me like Robeson was just like the guy that was there that got the opportunity because of the other guys on the line, like a Ray Edwards kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this is why I wanted Luke to talk about this, because the way they were talking on that radio show, I couldn't believe it. So, oh God, nothing's happening. We're pretty set, aren't we? It's all set. Well, yeah, the starters are set, but your success depends on your depth, and who knows that better than the Vikings team? And that's where, and nobody pays attention to it. I'll go out there next week after seeing the rookies for a couple days, and I'll start focusing on what the starters are doing, and you'll forget about this. But that's where the battles are, and that's where, and they have such a legitimate importance to the team, and I think it's overlooked a little bit by sometimes lazy reporters like myself. So.
Did you talk about Bauer, Luke? Did I miss that?
Yeah, Bauer is part of this. I think, Weatherly, Bauer, Odenigbo, and the new guy, Aruna. And I think you roster 1, practice squad 1, and then depending on if you want to keep 5 defensive ends or 4, you get a roster or practice squad or whatever. And I think of those 4, one of those guys is just going to have to be gone entirely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll be completely honest. I'm very intimidated, and this has been something since I was a child, where I remember I was sitting there with Joe, and my resting heart rate was like 105. And Joe, you said, I know you were so excited to be here, and like this is so awesome for you, but at the end of the day, it's really boring. Because we're sitting there watching rookies just kind of do walkthroughs, And I said to Joe, like, I'm just in awe of your ability to watch we were watching and create such great stories from it, and so, I'm trying to learn how to convert that into a story, and I think,
well, you get the hang of it. I thank you for saying so, but you get the hang of it after you do it. My first camps, I was the same way, because you're sitting down and you're watching this, and what am I looking for? Who am I, and there's a number of different ways you can do it. You can have a preconceived story idea before you go down there, and then follow that. So you can watch what goes on and things that stand out. You take notes the whole time. Okay, write this down. And then if you formulate a story idea, then you try to make sure and get a quote from that guy afterwards, or a quote about him by somebody else. And there's that way you can do it. Or you can do like I do a lot of times when I'm watching this stuff, is I'm taking notes on everything I see and then just give a rundown of everything that's gone on and just kind of piece it together. This is what happened today, because it's not earth shattering. Some days it's just they're running through their stuff. You look at and see who's starting where, who's getting the first team reps, and then look for battles and fights between some of the guys who are trying to win a job. Stuff comes up, stuff happens, but after a while, it does tend to get the same sometimes too. But so it was good. It was fun to watch it through your eyes a little bit as well.
It was interesting. There's 3 guys that I think were from a TV station and a local one, and they said, "Well, is Dalvin Cook doing an interview today?" And the guy said, "No." And the guy goes, "Well, shit, our story's ruined. We got nothing." And I was like, it's just interesting to see how all that works.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really, I wanted to take the opportunity to first thank you guys just for being the 2 guys that stuck with me since like 2015, when this was like JavaScript website that looked like it was from 1995 to where we're at now. It's just astounding. I mean, I've had people tell me, I recognize your voice from your podcast. I'm like, are you kidding? What? It's really awesome that we've got to this point. So I wanted to say that before the end of the show, since most people don't listen at that point. But I also just think the people that listen to our show, because without them we wouldn't be here either. But there was a couple other things from camp too that I thought were interesting. We got to see Cook without his brace on, which is like super exciting for a lot of people. I know he spoke today. I believe Kirk Cousins.
Scares the living hell out of me, Joe.
What?
That scares the living hell out of me.
What?
Get a brace on that knee. Get a brace on that knee, damn it.
Especially with your experience with knee injuries. My goal was to go out and see Kirk Cousins' press conference, but my schedule wouldn't allow it. But I know you guys.
That's worth mentioning too, though, that Kirk Cousins showed up, and wanted, he talked about a little bit in his press conference how he says, I'm going to take every opportunity I get. This is a new offense, and the more reps I get, the more I can be a leader to these guys. I can, find out. I just said, hats off to him. That's
on day one.
Yep, he's out there with the rookies. He didn't have to be there.
Yeah.
But every quarterback was, him and Simeon and the other two. And someone mentioned when they asked him a question, they said, Bradford wasn't last year. He didn't show up for the rookie stuff. And, it was a new offense for him, too. So it was kind of interesting. I was really impressed to see that.
It's, he seems to be doing everything right. He seems to be, there's an article by Gessling, the third plug for Gessling in this show, in the paper this week, kind of about him as a person and how he prepares. He seems to be doing the stuff you want your quarterback to be doing. I know we don't really know, as people that follow the team, the type of person he is in regards to his relationship with the media. I think we got a taste of that today. Whether he's the type of guy that, is going to be a little more honest and say what he's feeling, or if he's just going to give kind of the generic football answers. I know, Luke, you kind of...
Oh, you like that generic football answers. You like that, don't you?
Don't do that to me.
He seems like off the field, like the most, like he would have tea at his house and wear like you know what I mean? Like he's such a but then when he gets on the field, he turns into like some sort of just like he gets so like hyped up. But what did you get? Did you have any takeaways from his press conference today? Was there anything that was of note? Maybe I know DeFilippo also spoke, and I don't think they're giving a whole lot away at this point. But what did you guys think about that today?
Just real quick, I like the way he talks about other players who like football. And he does too. He loves it. He loves the game, and they're trying to get players that do, and he says there's a lot of them around here. That gets me excited, because if they love playing the game, they're gonna dig in when they need to, and they're not just gonna bail at the first sign of trouble. So that impresses me, and I'm kind of excited about that. Luke?
I really liked that we kind of already mentioned it, but I really liked when he brought up J.P. Quinn. Not because, obviously it's memorable because he was struggling, but also like he'd met that guy, I think, that day, and he's like a third team, fourth, fifth team offensive lineman that's, not going to be giving him snaps in the regular season. Kirk Cousins really has no reason to have to get to know that guy, but he's still like first name basis immediately. I really respect that.
He did that. His first press conference, he knew Sid Hartman's birthday. He had ordered his tie 2 days before, like on Amazon Prime. Like he was so prepared.
That's a little.
He seems like an incredibly thoughtful guy, which, for the purposes of football, it doesn't mean much, but as a person, it means a lot.
Yeah, you're right.
What did you guys? I know, Joe, you said maybe there's some stuff DeFilippo said. I'm really interested in what they're going to do with this offense. I don't think we really have a good idea yet on really what the offense is going to look like. I know a couple weeks ago, they kind of mentioned it was going to be a trifecta. That it was common sense. It was like what Cousins is good at, what DeFilippo wants to do, and the other third was what the Vikings were good at last season. So they're not just going to completely overhaul the offense. They're going to keep what works and kind of blend all three together. I don't know if that means, I tend to think that maybe Cousins is going to spread the ball around a lot. Drew from Vikings Territory wrote an article about that he thinks not only that Kyle Rudolph is going to have a monster season, but that he's going to lead the NFL in touchdown catches. And Kyle Rudolph not only put that article on his Facebook, but he took a paragraph from it and put it in quotes, and then linked to that article, and then wrote out Vikings Territory, which was like, are you kidding me? And so, I don't know. I guess my question is, if you got any general, maybe some tidbits in regards to what they're going to do, or if that's something that's just we're gonna have to pick up as camp goes on.
I'll throw that to Luke.
Can you say that again?
I have that effect on people. No, just kind of if you picked up anything in regards to what Cousins said or DeFilippo said in regards to what kind of offense they're gonna run.
Oh no.
It's not something we're just gonna figure out as time goes on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we can watch things and look like we really try to dive into what the drills they ran and stuff like that. But right now, in terms of what DeFilippo said, the questions are a lot about, hey, what do you notice about this? What's it like working with Kirk? What's it like working with Dalvin? He did talk a lot about one thing he said that really resonated with me was that Dalvin was assignment perfect in pass protection, and whether he can hold that block was kind of a thing. Pass protection was a bad thing for him at Florida State and kind of a knock on him. And whether he can hold that block is another question entirely, but being assignment perfect means that you're always in the right place and you're not messing up the protection calls, which is awesome for a second-year running back, and it's something that, Adrian Peterson would screw that up all the time, and it messed up a lot of plays all the way into his final years here. So having Dalvin Cook be assignment perfect, not only does that mean that, pass protection will be at least that much better, but it also means that you can put him out on the field more often and, put him out on the field in pass plays and not have to worry about him being like a tell like Adrian Peterson was.
I thought the same thing when I read that, Luke. I thought of Adrian Peterson and just go, oh my God.
Riffing constantly, costing us Broncos games.
So, I mean, in that regard, the Vikings are a leg up right now, today, because of that.
Yeah, it's really just like, I don't know if I've ever had, I don't know if it's ever, maybe the build up to the Favre season, but I just don't, the people that I interact with out, in the real world and online, it just seems like people are ready for this to get going, man. It's I'm super psyched. I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be one of the bigger years for the team, and
well, they all are at this point, right? Isn't that the way we all feel about every team? This is the year. But
everybody's 10-6 or better.
That's right. No, it's exciting because they were to the NFC Championship game last year. They got their ass handed to them, but they've made some improvements. In fact, they stole one of the people from the teams that handed their respective tailbones, to them. But and they got better on, I think, on the defensive line. And you're getting Dalvin Cook back. You got a brand new quarterback who, Luke. Luke had a text earlier today, or a tweet, was about looking at the other teams, or was that your the Broncos, the Jets, and the Cardinals, and how?
Oh yeah. So I followed over the offseason all of the SB Nation blogs for all 32 teams. SB Nation has basically a version of the Daily Norseman for every team, and then all of the team Twitters, the actual official Bears and Lions and accounts and stuff. And it's so fun to watch the Broncos sell Case.
Oh my
Keenum.
God! Can you imagine?
In ways that we all know there's stuff that Case Keenum's not capable of, and it was great last year. He played awesome. And we all kind of knew, and even Case Keenum himself knew that it was like a fluke
The coaches too.
And there are just like some fatal flaws that just didn't happen to get in the way, and that's great. And the stuff he does well was really important, and that's awesome. And 2017 is dope. But we know that like there's stuff about him that's going to be detrimental, and the Broncos are just hard selling Case Keenum to their fan base. It is unbelievable to watch.
We didn't even want Kirk Cousins. We wanted Keenum was our guy the whole time. I think was their initial. The way they sold it, I remember.
Keenum was their number one
Luke,
option.
say what you tweeted. Say what you tweeted.
I don't remember. Well, and now the Jets.
You said we vomited our quarterback situation over these three teams.
Yeah, because we had that, and then we had all the Teddy debates, right? And just Teddy on his own was a debate. Is like, is he good, or 14 touchdowns, or is there but accuracy percentage, and all that whole thing that raged on for like 3 years. And now the Jets are having that exact same debate over on their side of things, except now it's, is he healthy, and should we trade him to the Buccaneers? And then, is Bradford going to stay healthy is also going on in Arizona. And we had that entire hurricane of nonsense going on in Twitter for like a whole 2 months. I don't know how we survived. And then we just puked it all out on the rest of the NFL.
It's the best way to put it, man. I mean, I was astounded by the number of people that I ran into last year that during the whole will they or won't they Kirk Cousins thing that was, well, we should keep Case Keenum. And like you said, it was pretty obvious that that they weren't going to be able to replicate the success that they had. And that the Eagles didn't expose them, but they showed that like there's no way that they would beat them by putting the same exact product out on the field. I think the ownership realized that. The management did as well. Sad to see,
though, today. I saw today that Jets are talking about they're trying to trade Teddy and
to the Bucks.
Yeah, they don't want to
just
take
the
that
most likely destination because they're dealing with Jameis Winston stuff.
And they don't want. They're talking about if they don't trade him that they might cut him because they don't want to take that $5 million hit that they have to.
I thought it was like $500,000 only.
No, by some date deadline that is coming up.
Got a big roster incentive, I think.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So it's and that just kind of made me sad because they drafted a young quarterback and he's doing really well and they're pretty excited about him. So you don't they have three guys they got a veteran and so I don't know. I feel bad for Teddy.
This also matters actually to the Vikings because if they do cut Teddy Bridgewater, would affect our compensatory picks for next year. We would then not get that, and it would kind of. I don't know how it would rearrange the formula of like the players we gained versus the players we lost. But right now we're getting a pick for Teddy, and we would lose that.
So if Teddy got cut, do you think somebody would pick him up?
Yes, he's gotten a lot of hype around him at camp.
Has he?
There's going to be teams. Honestly, I could see a team like. So Josh Allen reported for the first day today, and he had a bad day, and if he continues to have bad days, and the rest of the quarterbacks continue, like I could definitely see the Bills like assessing their situation and being like, okay, we need to bring in other competition and bringing in Teddy Bridgewater, or somebody could break an ankle or tear an ACL in practice, and then suddenly there's a spot you need, or somebody could be dissatisfied with their backup and want to try somebody better. Or Tampa Bay would be a great candidate to pick up Teddy Bridgewater just to help at least challenge Ryan Fitzpatrick for those first 4 weeks of the season when they don't have Jameis Winston.
What a mess.
It's a tough position. I just, I've got to knock on wood and cross fingers and everything else that Cousins doesn't get hurt because, Vikings have been in this cesspool of, just totally questions at quarterback for years and years and years, and this is if nothing else, if he doesn't take the team to the Super Bowl, at the very least, maybe he will play 16 games. Maybe he will demonstrate he's the guy that maybe can do it next year and the next year. You can line up next year at camp and say, okay, the Vikings are set at quarterback. So
finally break that streak.
It is comforting to at least
what.
Like, we can debate, and we have a lot over, like, whether or not we're satisfied with it, but it is definitely comforting to, as a fan, to just, like, not have to worry about, like, who's going to win?
Yeah.
Kelly Holcomb or Brooks Bollinger?
Yeah. I mean, me and Luke, our entire lives, there's the stat that the Vikings haven't had a quarterback play 16 games in back-to-back seasons since before we were born, well before we were born.
And DeFilippo said that in his news conference today. He says if you have a quarterback competition, you don't have one. That's what he said. Said it twice.
He was throwing so much shade at the 2015 Browns. That was definitely a comment about Manziel and Brian Hoyer.
Ooh. It's just, this isn't like a hot take or anything. I just am so ready for the season to start and so ready for us to, cover the team. But I will be honest, I'm getting a little nervous. That's my nature, obviously, but I just always feel like something bad is going to happen, and so we'll see. But it's good to see that you guys are not... Or you're, like Luke just said, I was going to ask you, at this point, I know we debated Cousins a lot, and I was cheerleading him for a while, but it's just good to see that you guys are, going with the flow.
I mean, yeah, he's the quarterback for 3 years, and that's the thing about, we are not all in on this season, and I think a lot of people think, if we fail to win the Super Bowl this season, it's all just going to fall apart immediately. No, we have right now a 3-year plan in place. We have through 2020 basically the same core, the quarterback, a lot of the rookies and stuff, and there's not a lot of turnover right now, at least not planned. And obviously people could get hurt or people could regress and then weren't getting cut or we could make trades or whatever. But the next 3 years look to be relatively stable. So I think it's if we don't win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, then this whole plan kind of fell through. But it's not like the situation we were dealing with in 2009, for example, where it was kind of a one-shot and done. And we've even heard Rick Spielman talk about that, and Mike Zimmer talk about that, where it's you can't just take one chance. There's too much variance in football. You have to build a team that gets back to the playoffs and tries again and again and again, and then eventually you break one.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, Luke, you're going to be at camp then starting on Sunday, I believe?
Yeah, starting on Sunday and then every day through August 7th.
So I'm looking at the calendar, the 29th.
I think that's 8 practices.
Yeah, the morning practice is a pre-for practice, and they have 3 hours in the afternoon. Is practice canceled tomorrow, Joe?
Yep, all day for the funeral. It was supposed to be the veterans' first practice, but they've canceled it, and everybody's going to the funeral. And then
they're going to show up and drop their suitcases off and go to the funeral.
And so I did also want to mention before we go that ESPN 1500 is doing a contest for, I don't know, it boggles my mind that they're doing this, but it's kind of like an American Idol-esque contest for a new host on Sunday mornings before Vikings games. And essentially, you're supposed to do a 2 to 4 minute take. I've recorded mine, I'm not even kidding, probably 200 times. It's driving me insane. But the process would be that if they like what we do, then it would go to a top 10 where people would vote. And that's why I'm bringing it up, because if I make the top 10, the goal is to bring this show to ESPN 1500. That would require our listeners to vote like crazy. It would be all across our network. And then eventually they take the top 3 and do some sort of tryout live show in front of a crowd at the state fair. But I definitely want to try for that. Obviously we've talked to WCCO about a show, and that's still a possibility. But I think this show is good. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. And so that's the goal. So stay tuned for that, because the deadline is Sunday, actually. So I'm going to be submitting my show tomorrow, or my take. And it's going to mostly be me crying. But I really think we have a good shot. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. That's what they're looking for.
Just emotion. Raw. But yeah, Joe, you've been doing an amazing job covering camp. I went and I tried to write an article and I failed miserably, but I will be there tomorrow or on Saturday. Luke will be there starting on Sunday. So we're going to have a ton of camp coverage. I think Luke will be there for 10 days, and then we'll have either me or Tyler from Vikings Territory there. But the goal is to cover training camp as much as possible, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. So stay tuned for that. I don't know if you guys wanted to plug anything specifically. Obviously, we're going to be doing a lot of just camp stuff, but if you wanted to kind of talk about perhaps the angle you're taking, or Luke, I don't know if that's to be determined, or if you have some ideas on what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, I'm probably going to continue the same vibe that I had with the 90-man series, so please go check that out. Interesting context.
I'll link all those into the article for this show, by the way.
Yeah. Go check that out. You could just link the intro post. There's links within that to all of them and like an explanation of how this works and what I'm trying to do with it and stuff.
Perfect.
I'm going to be following two rookies who are covering the Vikings for the first time in their life.
There it is. But yeah, I'll be following a lot of the deep players. You know, the Cedric Langs and Jonathan Wynns of the world that are just trying to put enough good tape out there to maybe get noticed by another team that maybe has room for them or long shots to make the team and following their stories. If there is a big play, you always, if you follow the right people, you'll see like a big play and 8 people will be like, so-and-so made a huge catch. Look to @purplePTSD. I will provide the context for that player's story.
Awesome.
Luke, love it when you come talk to them because some of them may not even get an interview throughout the entire camp, so they're going to love it when you pull up with your tape recorder.
Yeah, I would love it.
That's a good thing too. Yeah, download a recording app on your phone before you get there. But Joe, you got any?
Well, I just posted a story I wrote on. It was mostly on the kicker Daniel Carlson kicking yesterday at rookie camp, and just a couple quotes from him and from comparing him to the quote by Jeff Bedett, who said he's the fastest guy in the Vikings in-house. Said that these two rookies sound like they're ready for camp, so we'll see. But I'll go in next week and see what's going on. I may have a story, someone I want to follow, or I may just do some conglomeration of things that are happening in camp. Whatever strikes, whatever I see what's going on, and I always like to see who's talking and see what they got to say. And so today. For next week, I'm not there quite yet, but we'll get something.
Awesome. And I want to remind everyone to check out our message board. We do have a ton of content every day. I want to shout out Vikadan, who is our silent MVP. Follow us on Twitter at purplePTSD and at VikingsTerritory without the S, VikingsTerritory. And, of course, on Facebook at purplePTSD and VikingsTerritory. The guys on VikingsTerritory are doing a ton of great content as well, so we're going to be mixing and matching. I think we have seriously 20 writers lined up for the season, about 10 amazing sponsors that I haven't even told you guys about yet. So it's going to be a great year, and I just, again, wanted to thank everyone that supports the show because we wouldn't be hanging out at TCO if not for all of your guys' support, so thank you so much. But with that, this has been the Purple Journal podcast. We'll be back next week, Thursday morning. We're going to be cranking out shows left and right, so stay tuned for that. We're also going to be relaunching the About the Labor podcast on Vikings Territory, which has a pretty big following. With some new faces, I'll be there. A couple other pretty cool people that we're not going to announce yet, but it looks like we're lining up some people that you would recognize if you follow the Vikings are going to be on that show as well. So, with that, again, this has been the Purple Journal Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week. Skol.